I'm Sarah, and I've been married to Tom for over 30 years now. We have 2 sons, Jack and Mike. Tom always had a good job, so I decided to be a housewife and focus on raising our boys. It wasn't always easy, but I loved every minute of it. Jack, our eldest, was always a joy. From the moment he was born, we had a special connection. He was a curious kid, always asking questions and eager to learn. Mike, on the other hand, was a different story. Don't get me wrong, I love both my sons equally, but Mike was always more challenging. Tom doted on him from day one, which I think might have been part of the problem. Tom, you can't give him everything he wants, I'd say. He needs to learn the value of things. But Tom would just laugh it off. Oh, Sarah, he's just a kid. Let him enjoy his childhood. As the boys grew older, the differences between them became more apparent. Jack was always responsible, doing his homework without being asked and helping around the house. Mike, well, he was more interested in having fun. When it came time for college, Jack chose a good state school. He worked hard, got scholarships, and was determined to make it on his own. He moved into a small apartment near campus and got a part-time job to cover his expenses. Mike, however, had different plans. He announced one day at dinner that he'd been accepted into Westfield University, the most prestigious and expensive college in the neighboring city. "That's great, son," Tom exclaimed, beaming with pride. I was more cautious. "Mike, honey, that's a very expensive school." "Are you sure?" "Mom, don't worry about it," Mike interrupted. "Dad said he'd take care of it, right, Dad?" Tom nodded, and I felt a knot form in my stomach. I knew this wasn't going to end well, but I hoped I was wrong. I really, really hoped I was wrong. As Mike settled into his new life at Westfield University, I couldn't shake off a nagging feeling of unease. He rarely called home, and when he did, the conversations were brief and vague. Tom didn't seem concerned, but I couldn't help worrying. "He's just busy with his studies," Tom would say whenever I brought it up. "College is a big adjustment." I tried to believe him, but something didn't feel right. One day, after months of minimal contact, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I was going to visit Mike without telling him I was coming. When I finally arrived at the campus, I headed straight to the dean's office. The receptionist looked at me oddly when I asked about Mike's academic performance. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Thompson, but Michael hasn't been a student here for over a year," she said gently. My world spun. What? There must be some mistake. "He's been here for almost 2 years." The dean, hearing the commotion, came out of his office. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm afraid it's true. Michael was asked to leave due to poor academic performance. We sent a letter home." I felt sick. All those tuition payments, all those times Mike had assured us everything was fine, it had all been a lie. In a daze, I drove to the apartment Tom and I had been paying for. The scene that greeted me when I opened the door with the spare key was worse than I could have imagined. The place was a mess, empty bottles, pizza boxes, and clothes strewn everywhere. And there, in the middle of it all, was Mike, passed out on the couch with 2 girls I'd never seen before. "Michael Thomas Thompson!" I shouted, my voice shaking with anger and disappointment. Mike jolted awake, his eyes widening in shock when he saw me. "Mom? What the hell are you doing here?" "I think the better question is, what the hell are you doing?" I shot back. "You've been lying to us for over a year." The girls, looking embarrassed, quickly gathered their things and left. Mike sat up, running his hands through his messy hair. "Look, Mom, I can explain." "Explain what?" "How you've been wasting our money. How you've been living it up while we thought you were studying." We argued for hours. Mike tried to justify his actions, but I wasn't having it. In the end, I told him I was cutting off his allowance and that he needed to come home. "Fine," he spat. "I'll come home. But I'm telling Dad my side of the story first." I dreaded the confrontation with Tom, but I knew it had to happen. The drive home was tense, with Mike sulking in the passenger seat. When we got home, Tom was waiting. Mike immediately launched into his version of events, painting himself as the victim of an education system that didn't understand him. To my dismay, Tom seemed to buy it. "Son, it's okay," he said, putting his arm around Mike. "College isn't for everyone. You're just trying to find your place in the world." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Tom, are you serious? He lied to us for over a year." But Tom wouldn't hear it. He insisted on continuing to support Mike, saying he just needed time to figure things out. 5 years passed, and the stark contrast between our sons only grew more apparent. Jack, our eldest, was thriving. He had graduated college with honors and immediately landed a job at a respected marketing firm. His dedication and hard work were paying off, and he was quickly climbing the corporate ladder. I remember the day he called to tell us about his promotion to junior executive. His voice was filled with excitement and pride. "Mom, Dad, I did it. I got the promotion." "That's wonderful, honey," I exclaimed, my heart swelling with pride. "We're so proud of you." Mike, on the other hand, was still finding himself. Over the years, he'd bounced from job to job, never staying in one place for more than a few months. Tom always managed to find him new positions through his business connections, but it never lasted. I tried to intervene, to push Mike towards independence, but my efforts were always rebuffed. "Mom, you just don't get it," Mike would snap. "I'm not like Jack. I can't just settle for any boring office job." It was during this time that Jack met Emily. She was smart, kind, and hardworking, a perfect match for our son. When Jack told us they were getting married, I was overjoyed. "We're planning the wedding ourselves," Jack explained over dinner one night. "We've been saving up, and we want to do it our way." "Are you sure you don't need any help?" Tom asked. "We could contribute." "No, Dad," Jack said firmly. "We appreciate the offer, but we've got this covered." The wedding was beautiful in its simplicity. Jack and Emily had planned every detail meticulously, and their love for each other was evident in every aspect of the ceremony. It was at the reception that Mike dropped his bombshell. "So," he said, sidling up to Tom and me, champagne glass in hand, "I think it's about time I settled down too. I met this girl, Tiffany. We're getting married." A week later, we met Tiffany. She was pretty in a flashy sort of way, with bleached blonde hair and long, manicured nails. But there was something in her eyes that made me uneasy, a calculating look that didn't sit well with me. "It's so nice to finally meet you," Tiffany gushed, her voice syrupy sweet. "Mikey has told me so much about you both." As the evening wore on, it became clear that Tiffany had expensive tastes. She kept dropping hints about designer brands and luxury vacations. When the topic of the wedding came up, my worst fears were confirmed. "We're thinking a destination wedding in the Maldives," Mike announced. "Nothing but the best for my girl." I opened my mouth to object, but Tom beat me to it. "Of course," he said warmly. "Anything for my son's happiness." As Mike and Tiffany left that night, I turned to Tom, my voice low and angry. "Are you out of your mind? We can't afford a wedding like that." Tom waved off my concerns. "Don't worry, Sarah, I'll figure something out. Mike deserves a nice wedding too." But the expenses didn't stop with the wedding. Soon after they returned from their honeymoon, Mike and Tiffany were at our door again. "Dad," Mike began, his voice serious. "Tiffany and I have been talking, and we think it's time we got our own place." I held my breath, waiting for Tom's response. To my horror, he didn't even hesitate. "Of course, son. What did you have in mind?" Tiffany piped up, her eyes gleaming. "We found the perfect apartment in Westview Towers. It's a bit pricey, but it's just what we need to start our life together." Westview Towers. The most expensive apartment complex in the city. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "And of course," Mike added, "we'll need some help with the monthly expenses until I get my business off the ground." I couldn't stay silent any longer. "Your business?" What business? Mike waved his hand dismissively. I've got some ideas. It's gonna be big, Mom. You'll see. That night, after Tom had agreed to buy them the apartment and provide monthly support, I tried one last time to reason with him. Tom, this isn't right. We're not helping Mike by doing this. We're just enabling him. But Tom wouldn't listen. Sarah, he's our son. We have to support him. Besides, Jack never needed our help. We can afford to do this for Mike. The next few months were a blur of Mike's failed business ventures and Tiffany's increasing demands. Each time they came asking for money, Tom would give in, and I felt powerless to stop it. It was during this time that we received wonderful news from Jack and Emily. They were expecting their first child. I was overjoyed at the prospect of becoming a grandmother, but this happiness was tainted by tragedy. Tom collapsed at work one day, suffering a massive heart attack. By the time I reached the hospital, it was too late. My husband of over 30 years was gone. The world seemed to stop. I felt numb, unable to process what had happened. Jack rushed to my side, taking charge of the funeral arrangements and supporting me through the haze of grief. Mike, on the other hand, barely seemed affected. He stood at the funeral with a bored expression, while Tiffany spent the entire time on her phone, her short black dress drawing disapproving looks from the other mourners. As we stood by the freshly filled grave, Mike suddenly turned to me. So, when do we discuss the inheritance? I am the sole heir, after all. I stared at him in disbelief, unable to comprehend the callousness of his words. In that moment, I realized that the son I had raised was truly gone, replaced by this selfish, entitled stranger. The same evening, Mike and Tiffany cornered me in the living room. The other guests had left, leaving behind a heavy silence and the lingering scent of sympathy bouquets. Mom, Mike started, his voice unnaturally loud in the quiet house. We need to talk about the inheritance. I stared at him, still numb from the day's events. Mike, your father's barely in the ground. Can't this wait? Tiffany stepped forward, her eyes glittering. With all due respect, we have a right to know. We have plans, you know. I felt a surge of anger cut through my grief. Plans? What plans could be so important that you need to discuss this now? I need time to grieve, to sort things out. Tiffany's face twisted into an ugly sneer. Time? What you need is to face reality, old woman. This house, everything in it, it's all ours now. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Excuse me? She sauntered around the room, running her fingers over the furniture. Oh yes, I have big plans for this place. Most of this old junk will have to go, of course. I felt like I was in some sort of twisted nightmare. I am not going anywhere, I said firmly. This is my home, and while I'm alive, I'll be the one deciding what happens to it. Tiffany laughed, a cold, cruel sound. Well, at your age, that won't be for long, will it? I recoiled as if I'd been slapped. Before I could respond, Jack's voice cut through the tension. That's enough, he said, stepping into the room. I hadn't even realized he was still in the house. You should both be ashamed of yourselves. Mike turned to his brother, his face flushing. Stay out of this, Jack. It's none of your business. It became my business when you started harassing our mother on the day of our father's funeral, Jack shot back. He turned to me, his voice softening. Mom, I've been thinking. I want you to know that I'm giving up my share of the inheritance to Mike. I gasped, and Mike's eyes widened in surprise. Jack continued. And Mom, I think you should do the same. Trust me on this. I stared at him, confused. What was he thinking? But as I looked into his eyes, I saw a silent plea. Despite my bewilderment, I found myself nodding. All right, I said slowly. If that's what you think is best, I'll do the same. Mike and Tiffany exchanged gleeful looks. We'll go to the notary in a couple of days to make it official, Jack said firmly. For now, I think you two should leave. Mom needs rest. As Mike and Tiffany left, celebrating their perceived victory, I turned to Jack. What are you doing? I whispered. He squeezed my hand. Trust me, Mom. I'll explain everything soon. For now, pack your things. You're coming to stay with Emily and me for a while. As I packed a small bag, my mind was reeling. I was leaving the home I'd shared with Tom for over 3 decades, giving up my inheritance to a son who seemed to care more about money than his own mother. The drive to Jack and Emily's house was quiet. I sat in the passenger seat, my mind swirling with questions I couldn't bring myself to ask. Jack seemed lost in thought, his knuckles wide on the steering wheel. When we arrived, Emily greeted us at the door. Her pregnant belly was more prominent now, and despite my turmoil, I felt a flutter of joy at the sight. "Oh, Sarah," she said, pulling me into a gentle hug. "I'm so sorry about all of this. Come in, I've made up the guest room for you." As I settled into the cozy guest room, I heard Jack and Emily talking in hushed tones downstairs. I wanted answers, but exhaustion overtook me, and I fell into a fitful sleep. The next morning, I found Jack in the kitchen, nursing a cup of coffee. I took a deep breath, bracing myself. "All right, Jack. What's going on? Why did you ask me to give up the inheritance?" Jack sighed heavily. "Mom, there's something you need to know. A few weeks before Dad died, he called me to his office. He confessed something to me." My heart raced. What did he say? "Dad was in debt, Mom. Serious debt," Jack said, his voice low. "He'd taken out loans to pay for Mike's wedding, the apartment, everything. And he'd used the house as collateral." I felt the blood drain from my face. "What? But, how? Why didn't he tell me?" Jack shook his head. "He was ashamed, I think. He realized too late that he'd made a mistake enabling Mike for so long. But by then, it was too deep." I sat back, stunned. All those years of indulging Mike, of giving in to his every whim, it had cost us everything. "So, when Mike inherits?" I began, realization dawning. Jack nodded grimly. "He inherits the debt too. All of it." I gasped. "But that means—" "It means Mike and Tiffany are in for a rude awakening," Jack finished. "They think they're getting a fortune, but what they're really getting is a mountain of debt." Part of me wanted to warn Mike, to protect him from what was coming. But another part, a part one wasn't proud of, felt a grim satisfaction. "Shouldn't we tell him?" I asked, my voice small. Jack shook his head. "No, Mom. It's time Mike faced the consequences of his actions. Dad protected him for too long. This is his wake-up call." I nodded slowly, understanding the wisdom in Jack's words. "But what about me? Where will I go?" Jack reached across the table, taking my hand. "You'll stay with us, Mom. For as long as you need. We've got plenty of room, and we'd love to have you here when the baby comes." Tears welled up in my eyes. "Oh, Jack. I don't know what to say." Emily joined us then, her hand resting on her belly. "Say yes, Sarah. We want you here." A few days later, we went to the notary's office to officially sign the waiver of inheritance. Mike and Tiffany were there, barely containing their excitement. As we signed the papers, I could see the gleam of triumph in their eyes. After the notary confirmed the documents were in order, Mike turned to me, his face twisted in a cruel smirk. "You know what, Mom? I've never loved you," he spat, his words dripping with venom. "You always tried to control me, always forbade me from spending money. And now look at you, a homeless old woman. I couldn't be happier." Tiffany laughed at his cruel joke, hanging onto his arm as they sauntered out of the office, heading to what used to be my home with Tom. The days following the notary visit were a blur of emotions. I tried to keep busy at Jack and Emily's house, helping with chores and preparing for the baby's arrival. But Mike's cruel words kept echoing in my mind, reopening wounds I thought had long since healed. One morning, about a week after we'd signed the papers, I was helping Emily fold laundry when my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. "Hello?" I answered, a hint of trepidation in my voice. Mrs. Thompson, a cheerful male voice responded. This is Marcus from Lakeview Estates. I'm calling to inform you that your new home is ready for you to move in. I nearly dropped the phone. I'm sorry, there must be some mistake. I don't have a new home. Marcus chuckled warmly. No mistake, ma'am. Your late husband, Mr. Thompson, arranged everything. The mansion in our community is fully paid for and ready for you to take possession. As Marcus explained further, I felt my knees go weak. Emily rushed to my side, concern etched on her face. Sarah? What is it? What's wrong? She asked, helping me to a chair. I relayed Marcus's words, my voice shaking with disbelief. Tom had secretly invested in a beautiful home for me, separate from all his other assets. He'd made sure I would be taken care of, no matter what. Jack came home early that day, and we drove to Lakeview Estates together. As we pulled up to the address Marcus had given us, I gasped. The house, no, mansion, was stunning. It stood proudly in an elite gated community, surrounded by manicured lawns and stately trees. Marcus met us at the door, beaming as he handed me the keys. Welcome home, Mrs. Thompson. Your husband wanted to make sure you had everything you needed. As we toured the house, I was overwhelmed by Tom's thoughtfulness. Every detail had been carefully considered, from the fully equipped kitchen to the cozy library filled with my favorite books. There was even a nursery, ready for visits from my future grandchild. Oh, Tom, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. You always knew how to take care of me. A few days after settling into my new mansion, I was packing some remaining belongings at Jack's house. Suddenly, the front door burst open with a bang. Mike stormed in, his hair disheveled and his eyes wild. Tiffany trailed behind him, her face a mask of fury. Mom. Jack. You lying, cheating bastards. Mike yelled, his face red with rage. I stood up, my heart racing. Mike, Tiffany, please calm down. What's going on? Mike thrust the papers in my face. Creditors came to the house, Dad's house. They're demanding payment of all these debts I knew nothing about. They say since I'm Dad's sole heir, I've inherited all his debts along with the property. Tiffany chimed in, her voice shrill, they're threatening to take the house if we don't pay up immediately. Mike continued, his voice a mix of anger and desperation. I checked Dad's accounts. There's no money, Mom. Nothing. He was supposed to have savings, but it's all gone. Where is it? I couldn't help but smile sadly, the irony of the situation not lost on me. Your father invested that money in my mansion a few years ago. He put it in my name, so it's not part of the inheritance. Mike's jaw dropped, but then he perked up. Mom, you have to sell the mansion and give me the money. It's the only way to save Dad's house. I shook my head slowly. I'm sorry, Mike, but I can't do that. The mansion is mine, legally and rightfully. Why don't you sell the apartment your father bought for you? No. Mike shouted. We're counting on rental income from that place. There has to be another way. I spread my hands, feeling a strange mix of sadness and vindication. I'm afraid there isn't, Mike. This isn't my problem to solve anymore. Then, remembering his cruel words from the notary's office, I couldn't resist adding, tell me, how does it feel to ask for help from a homeless old woman? Mike's face flushed an even deeper red, his fists clenching at his sides. For a moment, I thought he might lash out physically. But before he could react, Jack stepped between us. His voice was calm but firm as he said, that's enough. You've made your choices. Now you have to live with the consequences. Get out of my house. With a firm hand, Jack escorted Mike and Tiffany to the door, closing it behind them with a definitive click. As I settled into my new life at Lakeview Estates, I couldn't help but feel a profound sense of gratitude towards Tom. The community was everything Marcus had promised and more. Elegant homes lined the streets, each surrounded by meticulously maintained gardens. My neighbors were friendly and welcoming, and I soon found myself part of a vibrant social circle. One of the best features of my new home was its proximity to a top-notch medical clinic. Given my age, it was comforting to know that excellent healthcare was just a stone's throw away. One sunny afternoon, as I was tending to my rose bushes, I received a call from my old friend, Margaret. After exchanging pleasantries, she hesitated, her voice taking on a more serious tone. "Sarah, I thought you should know. I've heard some news about Mike and Tiffany." I paused, my heart skipping a beat. "What kind of news, Margaret?" She sighed heavily, before continuing. "Well, it seems they've had to sell both the house and the apartment to pay off their debts. They've moved into a small, cheap rental on the other side of town." I absorbed this information silently, a mix of emotions washing over me. Margaret wasn't finished. "There's more, Sarah. Tiffany, she's left Mike. Apparently, she couldn't handle the downgrade in lifestyle. And Mike, well, he's had to get a job. He's working as a salesman at a local electronics store now." I thanked Margaret for letting me know, and sat down on a nearby bench, my mind reeling. Part of me felt a twinge of satisfaction that Mike was finally facing the consequences of his actions, but another part, the mother in me, ached for his pain. As the weeks went by, I heard more snippets about Mike's new life. He was struggling, but for the first time, he was standing on his own 2 feet. There were moments when I was tempted to reach out, to offer help, but I resisted. This was a journey Mike needed to make on his own. My own life, meanwhile, was filled with joy. Jack, Emily, and their newborn daughter, Lily, visited often. The sound of Lily's laughter echoing through the halls of my new home was a balm to my soul. One particularly memorable afternoon, as we sat on the patio watching Lily crawl on a blanket, Jack turned to me with a serious expression. "Mom, I've been thinking about Mike," he said cautiously. I nodded, encouraging him to continue. "I ran into him at the grocery store last week. He looked different. Humbled, I guess. He asked about you. I told him you were doing well. That you missed him. Was that okay?" I reached out and squeezed Jack's hand. "It was perfect, honey. Thank you." As I watched Emily scoop up Lily, peppering her chubby cheeks with kisses, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. Life had taken unexpected turns, bringing both pain and joy. But sitting here, surrounded by the love of my family, I knew that everything would be all right. Everything would be all right.